the Barbados Light and Power for having these cells on the roof. You're expected to get a roof, and in X amount of years, you'll be paid back for it. All these things are attracting people. But I want to be honest here. As always, the honorable member said, if he woke up, the member that presented it at 3 o'clock, he may have a different story. That does not apply to this honorable member here. If you wake me up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, I have the same conversation with you. But the ordinary Barbadian, in truth and in fact, and the honorable member for St. James Central said that the ordinary Barbadian has access to this. But in my world, the ordinary, for me, is a strange word. But in my world, I want to refer to for those of us who are middle and even lower income, really and truly cannot afford, in a lot of cases, to buy into this PV system. It's very expensive, and I'm sitting back and hoping in years to come it decreases in costs. But it's very expensive. Yes, you can go to the banks, but even though they are prohibitive, in this time in our society, a lot of people are in debt, credit card bills are high, the banks are not offering loans in cases like this. And, at one point, BNOC, National Oil Company, had offered the members of the public servants, I think, the opportunity to purchase the PV systems where you pay back per month. I had applied, but for some reason my application got lost in the mix, and when they found it, the date had gone, and I could not convince those who were in charge to let me be on it, barring that it was not my fault. But that was a good system, because you had proof that you were paying your electric bill every month, whether it be $300, $400, $500, $1,000 in some of our cases. And to me, that should be enough proof for a bank or lending institution to say, okay, he or she is paying for it every month. It means that they should be able to pay back a loan for the same system. But that is not happening. The banks, despite the so-called ease of doing business, I somehow beg to differ. Up to last week, me and many others in the constituency and in Barbados were battling Royal Bank of Canada, who, because we did not send in updated information, it was a few days late, they actually froze the account. So I had people with small businesses unable to write checks for their employees. It was absolutely disgusting. So the ease of business in terms of getting loans for the ordinary quote-unquote Barbadian is not as easy as we think. I think we should really revisit the Barbados National Oil Company in terms of setting up systems where you don't necessarily need to borrow $65,000, $75,000, but pay back, revisit that to pay back BNOC or whoever the installers are, like you're paying an electric bill, which you do in essence every month. There is concern on my end about the elderly. Pensions, the lower limit for early pension has risen, and your salary, your pension basically has been cut. Pensioners do have electric bills, which I would have loved to pay for all, but there's a consideration for elderly people who really too old to get loans of that degree. What's to become of them? I think everybody has the right to be on this system. We are moving towards green energy by 2030. I think it's a little of a reach, but we have to try. And we have to include the vulnerable in our society. And that has been a bottleneck. Right now I'm still fighting to figure out, I know the reasons for it. For natural gas, Church Village, for instance, has been begging for natural gas forever, but the cost prohibitive factor is still there. And the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I'm glad that he did not point me out, because my name always is called when it comes to joining some line somewhere. I'm glad he didn't point me out. But he spoke about grid capacity, and that is something I am interested in learning about the value, because obviously Barbados Light and Power is about profit. And if in his wrap-up it can be explained, it might be a little slow, again, to me, in terms of the capacity. If it's a case where the private, you don't mind being off the grid, But I'm wondering, and I'm not sure if this is in the legislation, I have a sense that I heard it in the parliamentary group meeting, about communities actually having their own system where you can pay a minimum cost to whoever is supplying and get electricity. This is something that might be worthwhile to look into. But in essence, these are some of the issues I, as a constituent of my own constituent, and my constituency are concerned about in terms of access. We see there are a few farms in St. Philip North, not many, but they lie with the members of the community that are a little better off. But we all have to play a part in the green energy and trying to get Barbados climate friendly, and the whole work, the Prime Minister works really hard overseas to bring this to the fore. But I think accessibility is a worry. Gone should be, hopefully, the days where constituents come into my office with a few $1,000s of electric bill or water bill would disappear and decrease. So my hope is that we look at that so that it will be all-inclusive in terms of middle class, upper class, lower class, every class. And let this be a part of the initiative. Just 5 minutes of your time, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, Christchurch.
Thank you.
Christchurch.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Member, Christchurch Central.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. I rise to give a brief contribution into this debate, recognizing that what I heard this morning as the Honourable Member for St. James Central led off the debate was particularly poignant, Madam Deputy Speaker, because he outlined not just the challenges, but certainly the opportunities, some of the opportunities that the right approach to legislation can actually deliver for what is a particularly significant part of the economy. And I listened very carefully to the Honourable Member for Christchurch South in his response, and you know, amnesia, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a hell of a thing, because he lamented about costs of electricity bills to people in this country, and to the extent that the costs are high, he may have the public believe that under a previous administration, that specific actions taken by them till now still reverberate in the energy sector. And I'll just take a moment to enlighten the public through you, Madam Deputy Speaker, as to, in part, how his feigned concern about the energy costs and the high light bills actually emanated, Madam Deputy Speaker, from the intervention of 2010 onward. And now that he has summarily dismissed his opposition, he should be reminded that the record of the party that he seeks to lead is still there. And therefore, when you come into this chamber to accuse the government, this government, Madam Deputy Speaker, of not addressing some of the issues that are impacting people and the payment of their light bills in this country, I think it is a bit disingenuous. But be that as it may, some of us may presume that the public has a short memory, but let me take this opportunity just to highlight a simple matter. We all remember, Madam Deputy Speaker, when the utility was being acquired. And at the time of the acquisition, you would think that an astute Democratic Labour Party opposition at the time would have been interested in the well-being of consumers And if a Democratic Labour Party government if they were concerned about consumers' light bills for my constituency in Wharton and Lodge Road and Kingston and the other areas across Barbados, then why would the Democratic Labour Party, Madam Deputy Speaker, allow the cost of the acquisition of the Barbados Laden Power to be almost 2.5 times its market value? Because if you acquire something for almost 2.5 times its value, then obviously the return on that so-called investment, Madam Deputy Speaker, and more directly, the electricity rates set to achieve a rate of return on something almost 2.5 times its value, would mean that Bajans, Madam Deputy Speaker, have been paying more for electricity than they should have because the Democratic Labour Party allowed the acquisition of the public utility for almost 2.5 times its value. And therefore, you can't come in here today saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Barbados Labour Party ain't doing enough to give relief to consumers when the Democratic Labour Party presided over that. So when the Honourable Leader of the Opposition comes in here to ask questions, I hope he understands he can get answers. And he must, through you, Madam Deputy Speaker, appreciate that he comes with a long coattail of mismanagement, bad policy, bad legislation, and which has resulted, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the suffering of Bajans across this country because of that administration, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is nothing to be trifled with, Madam Deputy Speaker, because energy, Madam Deputy Speaker, energy and its supply, there's a almost one-to-one correlation, Madam Deputy Speaker, between how much energy is produced and consumed in a jurisdiction and its economic activity. Almost a one-to-one correspondence. And to the extent that the policy stance and environment that was created by the Democratic Labour Party had led to uncertainty, contributed to uncertainty within the sector. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, they set tariffs without consideration for the fact that as technologies advance, things will get cheaper in the context of being able to produce electricity. And they give no thought as to what that would mean for the consumer. So therefore, whilst we expect, Madam Deputy Speaker, that you make an investment, you will get a return on that investment, certainly as it relates to renewables, never was it contemplated by them, Madam Deputy Speaker, that after you have recouped your capital, the cost of the production of electricity compared to fossil fuels, Madam Deputy Speaker, is chalk and cheese. And therefore, the policy environment within which you're going to set prices should reflect the fact that the change in the cost of the production of electricity, Madam Deputy Speaker, should be then passed on, those savings should then be passed on to the consumer. So I hope that the Honourable Member, when he gets some peace in George Street one of these days, whether in the middle of the night or early in the morning, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he would reflect on how that political party and that administration contributed literally to the suffering of Barbadians today. And therefore, right-sizing this particular segment of our economy, Madam Deputy Speaker, is important. The building of resilience in this country is fundamentally important for how we are able to enfranchise Bajans in this country. And therefore, this is nothing to be trifled with. This is serious business. And therefore, to the extent that this bill is intended to be able to give greater certainty, not just to the utility, but certainty to consumers, certainty to other investors in relation to how we're going to chart this way forward, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is fundamentally important to the future of Barbados. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I promised to be brief in my contribution here this evening, and I just want to, through you, remind the Chamber that the Barbados Labour Party government has been and continues to look to see how, within the context of our fiscal circumstance, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to bring relief to Bajans. And we've done so specifically over the course of the last year and a half or so, almost 2 years, Madam Deputy Speaker, by being able to provide up to the first 250 kilowatts, Madam Deputy Speaker, for our residential properties, to have a reduced level of VAT, 7.5% precisely, Madam Deputy Speaker, being applied to that as a mechanism to allow for every household in this country, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to see their way through as best we can. Because, as we have had to do in multiple areas to try to contain, to try to give relief, I should say, given the extraordinary rise in costs globally, that this government has committed itself to being able to provide relief to Barbadians. And therefore, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm proud to say to the country through you that the government of Barbados will be extending that relief, which expires today, until March 31st of 2025, as this government's way of bringing further relief, Madam Deputy Speaker, to the people of this country. And therefore, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition should understand that within the context of a fiscal framework that we have had to rescue from the total mismanagement of the Democratic Labour Party, that we continue, where appropriate, to make sure that we right-size the budget to accommodate, Madam Deputy Speaker, to accommodate how we will allow Bajans in this country to be able to face a better day. Now, of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, you would think that the way that the Honourable Member spoke about light bills, as if somehow light bills just appeared from May of 2018. That's what he may have the public to believe. And therefore, the policy environment within which you implement as a government has a direct impact on costs, and it is something that we have been working with stakeholders to make sure that we can deliver, and it's something, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we will continue to work with. And as you know, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have had some challenges with the global supply chain. So much so, as you know, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government committed itself to, over a 4-year period, to be able to rewire, to bring up to code the electricity systems of all of our public housing estates, Madam Deputy Speaker. And that program started in 2019. We had a little bit of not hiccup, because COVID, sir, you can go out in a body place, really, and things. So there was a little hiatus because of COVID, Madam Deputy Speaker. But as soon as we came out of lockdown in 2021, that program resumed apace. But the program has been successful to date. But because of some global supply issues, it means that the meters that we want to acquire, we've had a little bit of a challenge in relation to that. But we've been working to make sure that we can not just complete the electrical upgrades for the housing estates, meaning not just the pulling of the wires, but the connection to light and power, so that the public safety concerns that those thousands of families across the length and breadth of Barbados were experiencing, to no response from the Democratic Labour Party when they were in office, Not one was responded to. But this government found the resources to be able to ensure that thousands of families in this country can see some safety. And we are working with the stakeholders now to ensure that as we complete the remainder of the electrical upgrades, that we're able to bring this particular project, Madam Deputy Speaker, to closure, because we understand that whilst we spoke today in glowing terms about the opportunities around where we see electricity going in the future, the reality is that this government, in focusing on the needs of individuals and individual families and communities in this country, we found the resources, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to fix a problem that was neglected under the Democratic Labour Party. And we are working with the stakeholders to make sure we can bring that specific project to conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker. So when he's in George Street talking, whatever he's talking in George Street, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Barbados Labour Party, we have been busy, Madam Deputy Speaker, delivering for the people of this country. And that record, so when they do the, I don't know what they're calling them, when they go checking, you understand? They will see the good work that parliamentary representatives do. Because when we canvass, rub shoulders, we listen to the people, Madam Deputy Speaker, and we formulated policy to respond to the people. And the people of Barbados, when they sense check, recognizing not just what was mission critical, but the things that we said that we will address, we have systematically, Madam Deputy Speaker, one after one after one after one, address these challenges. And as the Prime Minister would say, Madam Deputy Speaker, one cow, so one blow, sorry, this kill a cow. And this government remains committed, Madam Deputy Speaker, committed to be able to solve the issues that confront us. And given the challenges that we have had, not just domestically, but certainly more internationally, we are committed, Madam Deputy Speaker, to being able to do that. So the honourable member can leave here tonight knowing that that extended relief will continue for another 6 months, you understand, on the part of the government. And therefore, I hope that he will be able to be man enough or honest enough to admit, you understand? I know sometimes he says some things that will make you wonder whether he has taken temporarily leave of his senses. But I know he's a sensible man. I know he's a sensible man. And he knows, Madam Deputy Speaker, he knows the good work that this government, when he was on the side of this government, he knows
The honourable
the work.
member. The honourable member.
Yes, the honourable member.
Yes.
He knows, and the honourable member knows of the good work that this government has done. He knows. I don't know what he get himself into, Madam Deputy Speaker. He might not even know himself what he got himself into, but he knows the record of this government has been strong, and it's not strong because we say it is strong, Madam Deputy Speaker. We took the time to listen to people. We took the time to formulate the necessary policy interventions. As we were making those policy interventions, Madam Deputy Speaker, we were monitoring and assessing. So when I hope, Madam Deputy Speaker, that good sense will prevail and that the honourable member would not try to bring into this place what we regularly observe when we watch any cable news network coming from another place. Because Bajans are sensible people. And we do not want in this country any misinformation to become fodder that people then start making decisions that really are not in their interest. But I leave that for another time, Madam Deputy Speaker. We're talking about Electricity Supply Act today, and I'll make one further intervention in relation to where we are likely to see the future moving forward. The reality is, Madam Deputy Speaker, every Bajan has the right to determine whether they can buy electricity from the utility or not. And as we move forward with giving people options either to self-generate or to have multiple people generating, the issue will come down to this. If I have the investment to make that I am able to use the grid through license to transmit the electricity that I am producing, Madam Deputy Speaker, to you, and I say to you that I can offer to you electricity at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and you are happy to be able to purchase that from me, then the business of me in relation to the grid is to be able to facilitate the transmission of that to you. Up until now, any individual household, any business who wanted electricity, Madam Deputy Speaker, you only had one option. And as we move forward, we are likely to see the evolution of what will become potentially an energy trading platform, network, that would allow people to be able to produce. Somebody purchase in those, I heard the Honourable Member for St. James Central refer to it. You can sell your electricity to someone, and that someone then uses that as a pass-through to move into the grid that you, as the consumer, may be able to choose. Now, Barbados is still a small place, and therefore, to the extent that we may see this type of development moving forward, it is possible, and certainly it is possible at a regional level, and therefore, we must understand that with the type of technologies that exist today, and the relative ease with which we can produce electricity, that these types of innovations, notwithstanding not just quality, but certainly to ensure that the issues around the grid stability and those things are resolved. These things happen now in the United States, they happen across Europe, it happened in Canada, Madam Deputy Speaker, easily. And therefore, the extent to which we can see options for people making investments into these areas, either directly through the actual production of the electricity itself, or through a type of stock market intervention, whereby you are able to invest through mutual funds or some other similar instrument that allows an individual like me or you, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to participate. That is the kind of thing that is likely to take place moving forward, because in order to ensure that we get the best possible price for electricity, it means sometimes you have to explore different options for how that electricity is not just generated, but also transmitted through the grid, in order to make sure then that the consumer can actually get a choice, a real choice. And therefore, whilst the grid, and I say the grid in the context of the transmission lines and the like, Madam Deputy Speaker, the maintenance of it, that is going to become an even more valuable asset, more so than the actual generation itself, because if you think of the fact, Madam Deputy Speaker, that whether it is solar, whether it is wind, whether it is biogas and the production of electricity, some of those areas, I've seen instances where, for example, there's prospect of using wave energy as well as potentially part of the mix. There's also natural gas as part of the mix for the production of electricity. The reality of it is, Madam Deputy Speaker, that these different sources of energy production and the cost of being able to do that over time, we anticipate that that energy mix will be able to lower the overall cost and allow us then to be able to give not just better pricing, but better options for pricing to consumers. And I think that the general public, as we roll out these new strategies, that the general public over time, is not going to happen overnight, Madam Deputy Speaker, but over time, the government will be in a position to show how this specific intervention today has made a significant difference to the lives of ordinary Barbadians down the road. And with those few words, Madam Deputy Speaker, I support this bill. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise to support this bill before the House, the electricity supply bill. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it would be remiss of me to sit here as former Minister of Commerce, who had the responsibility for the Fair Trading Commission, and allow the member of the opposition to get away with what I would call in Belgian parlance and in Elton language with murder. Because it may not be a parliamentary word in this lower chamber, but we understand the interpretation when we say it. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, he understands that terminology too. But Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, sorry, this bill seeks to replace the Electric Light and Power Act. And Madam Deputy Speaker, the key weaknesses identified in the Electric Light and Power Act is that it has the potential to impede transformation of the energy sector, Madam Deputy Speaker. And, you know, one of the main benefits of this bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the ability to more directly regulate the operations of the public utility. And let me say that this is the first time that government has a clear legislative means of directing specific policy interventions into the operations of electricity supply. The first time. And I heard the Honourable Member and the Fair Trading Commission, and I made it known here. The Fair Trading Commission deals with tariff and economic regulation. Government sets policy. That's the role of government. And Madam Deputy Speaker, there's so much I can get into this afternoon. But I want to stay on point. I want to give my good friend from St. James Central the opportunity to wrap up, because time is against us. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Fair Trading Commission in this bill still holds the responsibility, and I want the public to understand this. The Fair Trading Commission, under this new bill that seeks to replace the Electric Light and Power Act, Fair Trading Commission has responsibility still to deal with tariffs and economic regulation. Government don't set prices. Government's intervention is clearly to deal with creating the enabling environment so that this energy sector can be transformed for the benefit of all stakeholders in the shortest possible time frame. And I want to go to I said I would stay on point, but I still think I should mention this, colleagues and member for Christchurch South. I want you to listen, you know. I want you to listen. There was a report given to your administration in 2012 called the Caribbean Hotel Energy Efficiency Action Program. In 2012, given to the Democratic Labour Party, which was the government then, we came in, member for St. Michael Southeast. We came in 2013, member for Christchurch East. We came in 2013, I sat behind where you were now, right? And we criticized your administration, member for Christchurch South, for failing to action the Shanat report. That's the acronym for it, CHENAC. Some put on a T, some don't. AC for the action, Caribbean Hotel Energy Efficiency Action Plan. And if you check this bill, member for St. James Central articulated the whole role of energy efficiency. So what you failed to do in 2012, from 2008 to 2018, we are now implementing. Because energy efficiency, as an engineer, I can tell you, and I heard a member for St. James Central alluded to it, we can save a lot of money if we focus on energy efficiency, especially in the hotel sector. And this report was given to the last administration. I don't have the report, but we made it a document of the House then, because I was shadowing energy then. And we made it a document in this House, and I'm sure that the clerk of this assembly in this lower chamber can find that report and share with you. So when I sit down and I hear that this government, we have given so much power to ministers, ministerial power, we only deal with policy. We only set policy. We don't set prices, no tariffs. So, member for Christchurch South, let me just leave you with this one other point. Section 35 of the Electric Light and Power Act. Section 35 was never amended. It always existed with the right to revoke and amend licenses. Always existed. And let me turn you now to Section 78 of this bill. Read Section 78. You're the lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a basic engineer. I deal with numbers and I deal with processes. And I deal with equipment. You said you're a lawyer, you're a wordsmith. Check 78. Repeal of the Act 2013 to 21 and transitional provisions, the Electric Light and Power Act. This gives the right to carry on the regime for all licenses, right? So, existing licenses which date back to since 1907 can exist as a result of Section 78. And only new licenses can be issued under the section of the new bill. Only new license regime, but further to that, you member in the year 2015, I made my notes, you know. You need to go back and see who was the first chairman back in 2015 that empowers the minister to either revoke or amend any of the orders in respect to the Barbados Light and Power Company's current franchise. Go back and check and tell me who was the person, who was the first chairman back in 2015. So when you come in here, you represent the Democratic Labour Party, you know. You represent the Democratic Labour Party. You don't represent the current government. You left us. I don't know for a reason. I just heard the member for Christchurch East Central who spoke. I don't want to get into that because I can get into that now. Prices. You're the lawyer. And what you said earlier would mislead the country. What the member for Christchurch South said earlier. This bill seeks to improve the ease of doing business and allow us to get where we want to go with energy transformation in the fastest possible time. We are not dealing with price setting, and I don't want the public to for us to leave this chamber and you send the wrong message to the public that the intervention of the minister is setting prices and dealing with economic regulation. We intervene only to regulate policy and to allow this process, because the energy sector is a key economic sector to provide growth in this country. And if we sit down and we listen to you, we won't do nothing. You're here to criticize. That's your role. But criticize constructively. This is a good piece of legislation. This bill that will give us the flexibility as a government not to interfere with the role of the Fair Trading Commission which is the economic regulator, you are mixing up the Utility Regulation Act, the right to intervene in a going concern in a business service. You are mixing it up. Madam Deputy Speaker, time is against me, but I just want to say that the legislation that deals with energy efficiency is here before us. The hotel sector is a key sector that will benefit from the amendment to the Electric Light and Power Act for us to focus on energy efficiency. And I would ask us to dust off the Shanat report from 2012 and let us utilize it for the good of the country and focus on some of these things that we can do within the business sector of this country. And that is treat with energy efficiency, because it is critical in our energy transformation. The Electric Light and Power Act had a number of inadequacies and specificities. It left two terms and positions, terms such as supply chief electrical officer, who has a role, cumulative install capacity. These were some of the things that were not defined. And the roles and responsibilities of the Electric Light and Power Advisory Committee were not clear. Neither were there clarity in relation to the regulatory functions of the Ministry of Energy and Business. I mentioned the Chief Electrical Officer, the Fair Trading Commission. There's no clarity between the roles and responsibilities. Don't mislead the people of this country as you oppose the government's policies. The proposed legislation, Madam Deputy Speaker, will establish an amalgamated regulatory system, will define roles and responsibilities for the various regulatory agencies, and that's the strength of this bill. In addition to allowing government the opportunity to intervene from a regulatory perspective in the utility energy sector. Mr. Speaker, I commend and support this electric supply bill, and I want to thank those members on this side who contributed thus far. And with those few words, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
No, thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, you know, Martin Luther King once said that one of the challenges with the black bourgeoisie is that it uses its position to undermine the interests of black people. And we saw a very glaring example years after Dr. King has passed here in this parliament today. The speech that I gave this morning, ma'am, I spent great time speaking about the national character. And I said that, and I went there because I believe sincerely that this sector is rife with opportunity. I also said, and I also believe, that one of the challenges facing this sector is that unless we educate our people so that they can rise to a level of comfort and that they can feel that comfort resonating in their own discussions, in their own living rooms, sitting down in a bus, ma'am, unless we are able to make our people compatible with all of the technical difficulties that rise, the jargon is difficult. It is about physics, and most people don't understand physics. It is esoteric. It is difficult for the uninitiated to appreciate and understand. And unless we, in leadership, whether in government or out of government, ma'am, make the effort to bring people on board, then we squander yet another opportunity to transform the economic history of this country, which has closed its doors and turned its face against working class people rising and being able to participate meaningfully in new sectors of the economy. And the failure of the black bourgeoisie in Barbados has been that every time we have seen new sectors being created, we feel comfortable that there are for a few to participate in, but that the very many must remain hewers of wood and drawers of water. I have never been there. I reject it out of hand as a philosophical concept, ma'am, and I will not go there. And even as my friend on the other side sits back in his chair and regales himself to the sound of his voice as he presses his phone to his ear, we can hear him listening to himself in his speech, because what he had to say is more important to him than to engage in this debate in a serious and sensible way. It is a form of mental stimulation and masturbation. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, the issue that is before this House now was misrepresented by the Honourable Gentleman, because my own investigation with the clerk at the table suggests to me that there was no dissonance, there was no dissent in the other place. And so therefore, the records of the Parliament of Barbados are that when this legislation went to the Senate last Friday, ma'am, there was no vote against it by anybody. It means, therefore, that those who represent the Democratic Labour Party there vary from those who represents the Democratic Labour Party here. Now, on the last occasion that transpired, ma'am, it called for the head of the senator to roll. It was intolerable. It was intolerable. And on the floor of a party conference, there was a political execution. Now, ma'am, I do not know what fate befalls those who chose to support this sensible piece of legislation, and we will wait and see. But outside of that morass, I want us to look to that which was contemptible in this place. It is contemptible for he who must know better to say that this particular piece of legislation that we are addressing today fails to automatically, and I noted his language, to automatically cause light bills to fall. And he invited me to rise in my place, to align myself with the view that this legislation will cause light bills automatically to fall. Not the words, automatically to fall. No, I am too old a cat to be tricked by a kitten. The reality is, ma'am, or a rat. The reality is, ma'am, the reality is that this legislation is about facilitation. This legislation has nothing to do with any cost of electricity. It is about facilitating the development of renewable energy, which is a technology that will lead ultimately, once we can get to scale, to the fall of prices. As we stand in Barbados today, and this is why I talked about the national character, the way in which we approach debate that should be lifting the tide of understanding, one tide rising all ships, so that all of us in Barbados can comprehend the raft of opportunity. But if people are kept in ignorance, and if they use this place that we should be educating people to pull them down and drown them in a sea of ignorance, because you feel it is a way of striking out against a woman that you obviously hate with every fiber of your being, and you can't get over yourself and your dislike for that one individual, we will get nowhere. We will get nowhere. And ma'am, the reality is that this piece of legislation obviously cannot automatically cause light bills to fall. So the headline, read all about it, read extra read all about it, light bills will not fall tomorrow. Well, I've given you the headline you want to get. Now, if you can raise your head above that, we can talk a little bit more seriously about the fact that Barbados today has less than 20% renewable energy on its grid. But if we can get it to 90% renewable energy, then the cost of energy, the cost of light to all of our people will in fact fall. But we can't get there unless we pass this legislation, which is supposed to remove the blockages or the obstacles that are there. And that is what we did not hear from the Democratic Labour Party in this place. But interestingly enough, as I'm advised and reliably, I believe, I have every cause, reason, and justification to believe that those who advise me are saying that which is true. That in the other place, those senators were able to point to strengths, they may point to weaknesses, but they had no disagreement because this makes sense. And why does it make sense, ma'am? You know, I sat down in my place and I listened. The FTC has been denuded of its strength and its potency and marginalized. No, ma'am, gobbledygook. Prior to this bill, the FTC did not have any role to play in anything called energy storage in Barbados because the legislative environment did not allow for there to be any energy storage. But we have established in this parliament today that energy storage is an indispensable part of that which we must do in the renewable energy journey, and that you cannot, in fact, have a successful generation of renewable energy effort without complementing it with storage of that which you have generated. And that therefore, there must be a role for storage and an expanded role for an FTC in regulating tariffs and setting tariffs for energy storage. So far from denuding the FTC, we have expanded its arc of responsibility. What madness were we treated to today? And then, ma'am, as though that were not bad enough, this bill takes us into the 21st century. Whereas you heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central so eruditely expatiate on the question of microgrids and then your ability as ordinary people to start to trade in a domestic energy market. Things that are unprecedented. But this legislation is opening the door to that. And who is going to regulate this economic activity? This new area of economic activity that ordinary Barbadians that live in Redmond Village and in Hoyts Village and in Fitz Village in my constituency would otherwise be alienated from, but now could have if they're so interested. And if you're not interested, that is fine too. But if you're interested, that you can get into a space where you can find a way of making money and also freeing yourself with the microgrids from a reliance on the public utility. Well, good Lord, ma'am. Well, this language has never been spoken in the Parliament of Barbados before. And to regulate that, it means that you have to have an expanded responsibility of the FTC. But the person charged with responsibility for standing at first slip and awaiting a change of mood of the country would have the country believe that those things are irrelevant and that in fact the FTC is being hampered and stymied when the legislation itself makes it abundantly clear that the FTC is in fact being enhanced in terms of its importance and in terms of its role. And you can heckle me as much as you like. Away with you, slight man. The FTC is not, was not, and cannot be involved in issuing licenses. Another fatal flaw in that which we heard today. What gobbledygook? Where does that come from? Everybody with a little bit of understanding on this matter, I don't care how minuscule the understanding is, must know that the FTC don't issue nobody the licenses. Licenses are issued by the government, the Ministry of Energy. The FTC don't issue nobody the licenses. And so therefore, ma'am, when you are speaking about the power of the FTC, you're talking about economic regulation. I just heard the Honourable Member for St. George South say so. You're talking about tariff setting. Let us break it down. You're talking about the standards of service that are being offered to the public. Nothing in that is being changed. Nothing in that regime is being weakened. In fact, the arc of responsibility has been widened. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, again, this practice of making things overly mysterious, appear to be overly complex, because you want to make the ordinary person believe that there is some mischief somewhere, that you want to be able, through disinformation and through misinformation, to misguide people. I could not put it better than the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central put it, that, you would listen to the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, and then you would act in your own disinterest. Because left to him, you should not be invested in RE at all. He says it's a failure. It's a failure. Well, it's working all around the world, but black people in Barbados shouldn't get involved. And you come straight back and ask yourself, why, if it is a failure, does the most honourable, you didn't give me permission to call the boy name, but some of the multi-millionaires in Barbados are spending every Sunday morning driving around Barbados to acquire more opportunity to invest in RE. Why? And who is their agent? Because it can't be that if I am here arguing for the ordinary man to get a piece of the pie, and he who leads the Democratic Labour Party is telling the ordinary man, don't bother with that. Don't bother with that. It's a failure. And now, ma'am, he goes to the housing effort of the government, because there's no, and that what cut deep. That cut me deep to the point where it hit bone. Because, man, there is no government to be found in the Eastern Caribbean. Not one that has gone so far as to incorporate the ordinary persons in their country in the renewable energy journey. And I cry, shame on you. Not one. And the fact of the matter is, ma'am, that he will say that they want the houses in Lancaster, in my constituency, because you touch them, you touch me. You want to say the houses in Lancaster are not connected to the grid. So what? If the house has all PV, I can self-generate, man. And through self-generation, I can bring down the cost of my power. I don't have to sell it to anybody. I don't have to store it because you're using it home at me. You don't understand it. You're not reading. And you get a bad brief. And you come in here and slavishly repeat every nonsense and mumbo jumbo that somebody shove at you with a long spoon, and you're disgracing yourself in the process. No, ma'am, it goes further. It goes further. He talks, ma'am, about the failure. He talks, ma'am. You can holler at me as much as you like. I am on my feet now. And when I'm on my feet, I will speak how I choose. No, ma'am. The system, the legislation that he obviously did not understand says, and I tried to guide him, I took him to clause 5. The minister shall direct the planning, development, and monitoring of the electricity system, and for that purpose shall require. This is the minister that he get in here and say that it's too much power for the minister. Well, this is what the minister is entitled to do. I want the country to understand what the minister is empowered to do, that the leader of the Democratic Labour Party don't want the minister to do. The minister is entitled to require the public utility to develop integrated resources and resilience, to require the public utility to develop grid modernization plans, to require the public utility to consult with the commission, the chief electrical officer, and the system operator, and other stakeholders. No, ma'am, in the previous legislation, it was a free-for-all, where no requirement was made of the public utility to do anything. So what the minister that he quarreling about now is doing is bringing a set of standards to bear on how the utility operates in Barbados. But at the same time, we are being told, well, this legislation is to let the utility do what it wants. When the legislation itself makes it abundantly clear to all but he who is consumed with listening to his own voice, that there is a change, there's a change in the game plan. And it don't done there. At the second, I know it is an excellent point. And the second part of it, the minister shall require the public utility for the purposes of developing plans for subsection 1A to do the following. Do the following. Disaggregate the public grid into a series of microgrids capable of operating across the island. So that for the first time in the history of Barbados, the minister can tell the utility, come in my office, man. The people out here need to be able to break down what they generate into groups geographically, and that they can sell to one another, and you have no control over the purchasing anymore. And that is where I use the word monopsony, M-O-N-O, mono. He didn't understand it. The monopsony is a market in which there's one buyer. And this legislation is saying, to hell with that. One buyer can't run Barbados. Everybody must be given a chance if they want to be involved in the buying. I tell you that I don't trouble you, but I want you to read. I know you can. It goes further. The development and deployment of smart grid infrastructure can be required by the minister. Now, smart grid infrastructure is what's carrying us into the future. And if you have, you look at the utility today, look at the grids, look at the grid, look at the poles that when I was a little boy, then were the poles there and they are still there. Huh? If you travel overseas and you see the high tension cables and so on that they're using, well, you see anything that look like that in Barbados? Madam Deputy Speaker, that is what is now capable. The minister, for the first time in the history of this country, is capable of calling in the utility and saying, look, we got to talk about how you going to make this grid, more resilient. And while he was interested to heckle me, I going where we never went before, that the minister is entitled now to call in the utility and call for underground placement of electric lines. So that whenever they got a hurricane come through and everybody lost the power, that foolishness can come to an end, and we now start to place the cables underground. This is not for the first time that Barbados has been hearing that. We have needed that for a long time, and the ordinary people have been asking why it is that I can see underground cable. I can't see cables when I go to certain places, because everything underground. Why it don't happen in Barbados? Well, you know why? Because nobody could compel the utility. And this honourable member now turns his face against working class people getting resilience in the electric sector. This honourable member, this is the New Look Democratic Labour Party. They say we turn the face against the people in Oistins getting an upgrade. Huh? And the deployment of utility storage facilities at diverse points along the transmission and distribution system is also now able to be required by the minister. So while the Dems, or this Dem, because the others in the Senate got saints, while this Dem decides that he ain't want nothing to do with these developments, I want to respectfully submit, ma'am, are at the core of a future resilient grid in Barbados and a resilient economy. If you feel that this is asking too much of a minister, and that if you had your way, none of these things could be required of the utility, then you and the utility suit, because the utility don't do nothing along these lines here anyhow. But we feel that the utility must be moved in a direction of progress, and that the people of Barbados must not be stymied in the journey of progress. And as long as we are in government, with our hands on the reins and direction of government, we shall ensure that there is progress against all odds and all opposition. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I wanted to speak now with respect to the Honourable Member Philip West raised some important questions. North. And vehicles. I wanted to say, ma'am, that the question of involvement of the ordinary Barbadian, there are many vehicles to this. The Barbados Workers Union, for example, is to be commended. The Barbados Workers Union, ma'am, joined with the private sector in order to make an investment in as much as 10 megawatts of solar photovoltaic at Mangrove. This is one of the largest investments contemplated in this country thus far. And it stands out, and it answers the question that the Honourable Member for St. Philip North raised, and raised appropriately. How can we get more people, ordinary people, to be onboarded? Now, if the workers' union says, we represent how many ever 1,000 people they represent, and they invest in this, then, ma'am, and they're able to sell that back into a grid, then, ma'am, they are able to have a return that can be shared with their membership. It is something that all similarly structured organizations should be considering doing. In fact, there are churches, the Anglican Church is one, that is also doing similar things. Not only to run the church, but the building, but ma'am, to make sure that the community that you serve is be able to participate. The Honourable Member also, ma'am, raised the question of ease of access administratively. I have had to remind the goodly gentleman who sits across from us that while he was with us, in fact, but clearly paying no attention, that we came here with a homeowner's right to renewable energy. He may not like the terminology, but what it does do is to allow anybody who wants 5 kilowatts, 2 kilowatts on the rooftop, 10 kilowatts, to be able to be treated this way. You don't have to wait on a license. All you have to do is go to the Ministry of Energy and register. You tell the gentleman over there in blue, I am interested in registering my installation. And there you go. So that when before, under the lady who he put in the Senate, when before there was a waiting list, how long was the waiting list? Months long, 6 months. People were waiting 6 months, and some, you tell me years, even worse. People were waiting, I know, about 6 and 8 months to get a license in Barbados. An ordinary homeowner. We are saying no. For 5 kilowatts, no, because it can't do no damage to the grid. It is too minimal. All we need to know is that it is there. And then we can have the necessary audits done from time to time to make sure that in good condition, being maintained, etc. And properly, if you're connecting it to the grid, properly connected. And if you're not connecting it to the grid, but then it got to be part of the insurance policy and so on and so forth. And you self-generate. You can have it home at you and self-generate. You don't have to sell it into the grid. You just run your house. And you know, ma'am, we have a conversation for a whole day. And a whole leader of the opposition ain't collide with the fact that, you know what the next technology that is already on our doorstep is? That the motor car that you're driving, plug in, and you are charging the car off the house, and the excess energy going back into operating the house. Well, that's what's happening. And you can't have a country seriously being run if there's a bankruptcy of understanding or a bankruptcy of interest on the part of the opposition. I mean, we don't need it, but we can benefit from it because the national character of debate that I started with is aimed at ensuring that we have 1,000 thoughts and 1,000 voices. But if you are all about hearing yourself, and then you sit down and you listen to yourself, even when the parliament going on, and you further stimulate yourself by laughing and playing it over again, then this is really not about anything serious as it impacts the politics of the country and the developmental paradigm. This is about self. And when a man's ego becomes bigger than the man, he ceases to be a man and becomes an ego. Now, ma'am, it goes further. The Honourable Member for St. Philip North asked about loans, and it was a very important question that she raised. And I want to say, ma'am, that this is one of the reasons why this legislation is so critical as well. Because there are a number of people out there who are interested. And yes, it is a heavy ask. In many cases, you've got to take out a loan for a house. Maybe you might be looking at $15,000, $20,000 in some cases, depending on the size of the house, a little bit more. And a number of banks have their own structures so that you can get different levels of interest being applied and so on. The credit union has been very competitive in this regard, and I'm not going to sell anybody's financial institution here. But the truth is, ma'am, as we have said broadly, there's now about $1 billion dedicated to this, but it can't move until when we get to the point of storage in the financial institutions. And therefore, the financial institutions have indicated to the government of Barbados that they have $1 billion tied up. And one of the issues that they have in unlocking this money is the absence of storage in this island. Again, ma'am, you cannot be heard to say that the Barbados Light and Power is being propped up by this government, because what this legislation is about, first of all, creating the legislative and administrative framework for storage that did not exist when the Democratic Labour Party created their piece of legislation. And secondly, and more importantly, that we now can compel the utility to come to the table. And this is not a new thing. We have stood in this parliament and heard the Prime Minister lament the fact that for now maybe 2 years, she has been engaging in conversation with the Light and Power about the need for us to move at scale. And because the whole world as one is trying to move towards renewable energy, the whole world is trying to source battery storage. The whole world. And unless we buy at large scale, then the price of being able to access it is going to be too high and above and beyond our reach. And our people will suffer, our investments will fail, and our country becomes more uncompetitive. That is the posture of the Democratic Labour Party. We, on the other hand, say, and we say it without reservation or apology to anybody, we need to purchase more storage at scale. That means a lot of energy storage to be deployed in the language of this legislation. They deployed at facilities at diverse points along the transmission and distribution system of the country. I just quoted the legislation. And if the legislation is telling you that that is its ambition, and the only way we can get it at scale is if the government don't buy energy storage, the utility will have to do that. So therefore, the only way that we can get it is by applying the pressure to the utility. The same utility that the Honourable Member will have you believe we have no interest in applying any pressure to, and that we only come in here to pass a piece of legislation to prop up. No, Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't want to go on and on. I think I have made the position abundantly clear. We have been treated to a nonsense, a whimsical, fanciful tissue of nonsense. And at this point, ma'am, the Parliament has done no service whatsoever by the Democratic Labour Party in this place. I commend the others in the other place for their maturity. And I hope that one day they will be able to sort out themselves in terms of their obvious internal and ongoing difficulties. I'm obliged to the House. I'd like to move that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable members, the question is that this bill be read the second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that Your Honour do now leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and allow this honourable chamber to sit in committee. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This chamber is now in committee.
Which order is supposed to go? 13?
You here, cause you don't be here, no who's sleeping. You don't be here. So you don't trouble me, you don't trouble me. You enough to catch a drive. Enough to take a drive. This honorable house is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, Permission to call the bill in parts and clauses.
Permission so granted.
Part 1, clauses 1 through 4.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 1, clauses 1 through 4 stand par.
The question is that part 1, clauses 1 through 4 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 2, clauses 5 through 8.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 2, clauses 5 through 8 stand part.
The question is that part 2, clauses 5 through 8 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 3, clauses 9 through 20.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 3, clauses 9 through 20 stand part.
The question is that part 3, clauses 9 through 20 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 4, clauses 21 through 23.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 4, clauses 21 through 23 stand part.
The question is that part 4, clauses 21 through 23 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 5, clauses 24 through 34.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 5, clauses 24 through 34 stand par.
The question is that part 5, clauses 24 through 34 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 6, clauses 35 through 48.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 6, clauses 35 through 48 stand part.
The question is that part 6, clauses 35 through 48 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 7, clauses 49 through 51.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 7, clauses 49 through 51 stand part.
The question is that part 7, clauses 49 to 51 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 8, clauses 52 through 54.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 8, clauses 52 through 54 stand part.
Wait a second.
The question is that part 8, clauses 52 to 54 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Part 9, clauses 55 and 56.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 9, clauses 55 through 56 stand part.
The question is that part 9, clauses 55 through 56 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 10, clauses 57 through 62.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 10, clauses 57 through 62 stand part.
The question is that part 10, clauses 57 through 62 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 11, clauses 63 through 65.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that Part 11, clauses 63 through 65 stand part.
The question is that part 11, clauses 63 to 65 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 12, clause 66.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 12, clause 66 stands part.
The question is that part 12, clause 66 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 13, clauses 67 through 79.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Part 13, clauses 67 through 79 stand part.
The question is that part 9, clauses 67 to part 13, Part 13, clauses 67 to 79 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule,
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor? Be the all
first-
honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say no.
Yeah, I got it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. All honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill.
The question is that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that you now report progress to, report the passage of this bill to Her Honor the Deputy Speaker.
The question is that they do not report the passing of one bill in committee to Her Honor the Deputy Speaker. All honorable members in favor, say aye. All honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Honourable members, the chairman of committees has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Electricity Supply Act 2024.
The question is that this bill be now passed and be so cited. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With that, we have come to the end of today's sitting, and I therefore beg to move the adjournment of the House until next Tuesday, the 8th of October at 10 a.m.
Honourable members, honourable members, the question is that this honourable chamber concludes today's proceedings and should reconvene on the Tuesday, the 8th of October at 10 a.m. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Yes. This sitting now stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 8th of October, 2024 at 10 a.m. in the morning.